Hi, class. My name is Andre Hood, and you are watching and listening to this live broadcast of My World and Me presentation. I appreciate all of you for that, listening in. As all of you know, we've gone as far back as 1500 to analyze and interpret history on a very global scale. When I first took this class, like probably most of you, I looked at it as just another elective I needed to graduate. I figured it would be dates to remember, quizzes, tests, and projects to take, and probably very little relevance to my life and my family's history. In high school, most of us were taught a very Eurocentric approach to history. In my last year of high school, we had one page in our textbook that attempted to summarize civil rights and slavery just all in one page. This semester, all that changed, and this class changed my whole view of history. So, welcome to my with Terrible Art World and Me project. Let's get started. Now, when starting this course, we talked of how our textbook and our class were referred to the globe. Our world in 1500 was a land mass referred to as Eurasia. Huge landmass. I knew right then and there this wasn't just going to start out in Europe, even though Europe is and was a significant player in my personal history. There's no denying that. But this just wasn't going to be about European immigrants hoping to find a better life in America. Because to be honest with you, that's not how my ancestors got here. We traveled figuratively, of course. We saw empires and trading powers in China, India, the Ottoman Empire, Russia, and even Africa. We talked about those being linked to developments in the future or a result of development in the past. China, Africa, and the Ottoman Empire controlled the trade and bulk of Eurasia in 1500. If the powers in the West wanted to trade, they had to go by land through these eastern and southern territories by their regulations, and this was called the Silk Route. The powers in the east and south dominated with an iron fist. So this agreement between regions of Afro-Eurasia went on for a while until Western Europeans looked for a way around it. Literally. They engineered ships, trading federations, and naval dominance that allowed them to control the Western and Eastern African seas, the Indian Ocean, and South China Sea. This created an unopposed sea lane to wanted silk, spice, and textile materials. Incidentally, it created exploration to a whole other world outside of Afro-Eurasia that turned out to be developing advanced societies and civilizations all along. Naturally, these people of dark complexion were looked at as inferior automatically. These civilizations in Africa and the New World were built to run on agriculture, gold, silver, education, and elite military power, just immediately and automatically labeled, quite frankly, inferior, and stabbed in the back and taken advantage of eventually. A list of broken promises and agreements later, you had the fall of these empires and the rise of forced colonization in its place, possible by the dominance of the seas by Western Europeans a while later. Now, here's for some more terrible artwork for you. They made it a global system called the Triangular Trade Route. Basic picture, but it does the job. The natives were forced to grow and pick raw materials in the Americas, building the economic machines of their colony and Western Europe. Many Indians in the Americas provided crops, gold, and silver, mining them, while kidnapped Africans grew and picked sugarcane in the Caribbean islands as well as cotton in the Americas. It's one part of the triangle. We'll say bottom right. Unfortunately, I, along with a plethora of other African Americans, am not able to trace my family history beyond this point because of destroyed records by slave masters, separations of families, and as a result of slave deals and the changing of names by slave masters. Learning how to interpret my history as I've done in class has me believe my ancestors were kidnapped from some part of Western Africa. We'll say again, either top left or bottom left or bottom right. Kidnapped from parts of Western Africa and shipped to the east or south coast to the United States and sold into areas of the deep south to grow and produce cotton at an unknown slave plantation land and have that shipped to Europe. We'll say the top of the triangle. And as a result of past developments, all the squigglies in between, with the dominance of the sea by the Western Europeans, they were able to keep this triangular trade route going for centuries. The problem of making sense of my history also took me to older generations of my family. They were uncomfortable being on YouTube forever, so I interviewed my grandparents, uncles, aunties, mother, and father in private. My grandfather on my father's side grew up in a sharecropper town called West Memphis, Arkansas. His stories about his generation and previous ones in our family once again linked up. The portion of our ancestors that stayed together and didn't disappear historically lived as slaves in Alabama for a period of time. As legend goes, one of my great, etc. grandfathers cornered his master in a stable, threatened to stab him in his throat with a pitchfork. And ended up stabbing him in his leg with the pitchfork and running west with his family, with this sympathetic northerner looking to get them to Illinois. His trip was obviously cut off by slave hunters in West Memphis who lynched that northerner in front of the whole town and sold our family to a local planter. Our family stayed in West Memphis up until my grandfather's generation. My grandfather grew up learning sharecropping in an era of harsh Jim Crow racism and discrimination. Like many African Americans, sick of conditions in the Deep South, he moved his family north to Chicago, completing our ancestors' journey to freedom in the mid-20th century, real freedom, as a part of the Great Migration. Most of the jobs taken advantage of involved working in the automobile industry, the post office, or miscellaneous odd hustle jobs. Very few African Americans held jobs with merit in the North. My grandfather took a job at the post office as well as learned plumbing and electrician work. He provided for his wife and family of 11 kids, which is really hard and impressive, all of which followed his example, and the ones alive are living happy and productive lives in Chicago. My father takes after my grandfather as a provider for me, my sister Brianna, and my mother. My father, mother, uncles, and aunties have passed down these morals to my generation, growing up under the tutelage of my grandfather and under the stories of my great, etc. grandfather. I was raised to eventually take care of my family before myself and to do what I need to do to survive and excel in this world for them. I am a few semesters from graduating with my bachelor's and don't plan to stop there. But I do believe none of this would have been possible without the road paved for me and those developments linking my history with a very broad global history. So with that, thank you for hearing me. I'm signing out. Peace.